Imagine spending your entire adult life in the desert, not by choice, not because you wanted to, but because God said so. The Israelites experienced this. 40 years. 40 years of walking in circles through sand and rock. 40 years of eating the same food, manna from heaven, day after day. 40 years of watching the older generation die in the wilderness without ever reaching the promised land. Most people read this story and think one thing: God was punishing them. But that's not what was happening. God wasn't punishing Israel. God was preparing them. Let me set the scene. The Israelites have just escaped Egypt. They've seen 10 plagues. They've watched the Red Sea part. They've experienced miracles that defied explanation. They should be grateful. They should be trusting. They should be ready to possess the land God promised them. But when they arrive at the border of Canaan, something goes wrong. Moses sends 12 spies into the land to scout it out. The spies come back with a report. The land is incredible. It flows with milk and honey, but there's a problem. The people there are giants. The cities are fortified. We can't win. And the people believe the spies' fear instead of God's promise. Numbers 14:1-4 shows what happens next. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, "If only we had died in Egypt or in this desert. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt?" They wanted to go back to slavery, back to the whips and the chains. The freedom God offered terrified them more than the captivity they'd known. So God made a decision. You don't trust me? Fine. You want to wander? You'll wander. For 40 years you'll wander in the wilderness. 1 year for each day the spies were in the land. And in those 40 years, everyone over 20 years old, everyone who saw the miracles and still didn't believe, will die in the desert. Your children will inherit the land, but you won't. It sounds harsh. It sounds like punishment. But it wasn't. It was preparation. Here's what most people miss. The wilderness years weren't about making Israel suffer. They were about transforming Israel into a people capable of possessing the land. Think about who was leading Israel: Moses, Aaron. These were men who had lived as slaves. They'd known oppression. They'd known fear. They'd known the mentality of bondage. That mentality doesn't leave you just because you escape Egypt physically. You have to escape it mentally and spiritually. The Israelites needed time. They needed 40 years for the slave mentality to die. They needed 40 years for a new generation to be born, a generation that had never known chains, a generation that had only known God's provision, a generation that had heard the stories of the plagues in the Red Sea, but hadn't experienced the shame of slavery. During those 40 years, God provided for them. Exodus 16:35 says, "The Israelites ate manna 40 years, until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan." Every single day for 40 years, manna fell from heaven. Their clothes didn't wear out. Their feet didn't swell. God sustained them completely. But more than that, God was teaching them. He was showing them that He could be trusted with the small things: daily bread, water in the desert, protection from enemies. If they could trust Him for those things, they could trust Him for the big thing: possessing the land. The wilderness wasn't punishment. It was university. And here's the thing that will hit you. The wilderness was necessary. If the Israelites had entered Canaan immediately, they would have failed. They were too afraid. They didn't have the faith necessary to face the giants in the land. They would have been slaughtered. But 40 years of learning to trust God in the wilderness, that changed everything. By the time Joshua led the new generation into Canaan, they were ready. They had a different spirit. They had faith. They had seen God provide for 40 years. They had learned that God's promises were trustworthy. And when they faced the walls of Jericho and the armies of Canaan, they didn't hesitate. They trusted God, and the walls fell. The wilderness made them ready. And here's where this becomes personal for you. You have a wilderness. Maybe it's not a literal desert, but you know what I'm talking about. It's a period in your life where nothing seems to be working, where you're stuck, where you're waiting for something, a job, a relationship, a healing, a breakthrough, and it's not coming. And you think God is punishing you. You think something is wrong. You think maybe God forgot about you. Maybe you did something to deserve this. But what if your wilderness is actually preparation? What if the thing you're waiting for isn't coming yet because you're not ready for it yet? What if God is doing a deeper work in you, not to make you suffer, but to make you capable? The Israelites in the wilderness could have complained. They could have said, God, this is unfair. We left Egypt. We should be in Canaan by now. But the wilderness wasn't about fairness. It was about readiness. If God gave you what you wanted right now, would you be ready for it? If God opened the door you've been praying for, would you have the faith to walk through it? If God gave you the relationship you've been dreaming about, would you have the spiritual maturity to maintain it? Maybe not. Maybe your wilderness is preparing you. During the wilderness years, the Israelites learned dependence. They learned that God provides. They learned that His promises are reliable. They learned faith, and those lessons, learned in the hardest environment, became the foundation for everything that came after. Your wilderness is doing the same thing. The job you didn't get is teaching you to trust God. The relationship that didn't work out is teaching you what you need to look for. The delay in your plans is teaching you patience. The financial struggle is teaching you to depend on God, not money. The health crisis is teaching you what actually matters. The wilderness is preparing you for the promised land. And here's the hard truth. If you try to skip the wilderness, you'll never possess the land. You'll spend your whole life wandering, never quite reaching what God has for you, because you weren't ready. But if you embrace the wilderness, if you see it not as punishment, but as preparation, everything changes. The wilderness becomes the pathway to your promise. Numbers 14:33 says this, Your children will be shepherds here for 40 years, suffering for your unfaithfulness until the last of your bodies lies in the desert. That sounds like punishment, but it's not. It's redemption. It's God refusing to let them enter the land unprepared. It's God loving them enough to make them wait. Because God doesn't give you the promised land so you can fail. He prepares you so you can succeed. Moses never entered the promised land. He died in the wilderness. But Joshua did. The new generation did. And they succeeded because they'd been prepared. They'd learned faith in the wilderness. Your wilderness is the same. It's not keeping you from your promise. It's preparing you for it. So the question isn't, when will my wilderness end? The question is, what is my wilderness teaching me? Because every single day in the wilderness is an investment in the person you're becoming. Every struggle is building faith. Every delay is building trust. Every hardship is building character. Every unanswered prayer is building dependence on God, not on your circumstances. The Israelites could have seen the wilderness as 40 years of suffering, but it was actually 40 years of blessing. 40 years of God teaching them, providing for them, and preparing them for the greatest victory of their lives. Your wilderness might feel like punishment. It might feel like God has abandoned you. But He hasn't. He's preparing you. And when your 40 years are over, when your wilderness season ends, you'll understand. You'll see that every step, every struggle, every season of waiting was necessary. It was preparing you for something bigger than you could have imagined. The wilderness isn't your destination. It's your pathway. And the God who led Israel through the desert for 40 years is the same God leading you through yours. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. Trust Him in the wilderness. Learn from it. Let it shape you, because on the other side of your wilderness is your promised land, and you're going to be ready for it.